Dolores O'Riordan was the lead singer for the Cranberries, an Irish alternative rock band that was on tour in Great Britain when 56 persons were seriously injured and 2 children were killed by shrapnel when a bomb was detonated in the town of Warrington, located in northwest England in 1993. The Irish Republic Army, the IRA, claimed responsibility for detonating the bomb, one of over 10,000 bombings over the course of 30 years. They claimed the bombing was for all of Ireland as they attempted to violently remove British forces from Northern Ireland. When the bombing happened, Dolores was on a tour bus near Warrington, as she later wrote. I was devastated about the innocent children being pulled into that kind of thing. That's why I wrote the lyrics to the song Zombie, to protest this event and to iterate the importance that it's not me, meaning even though I'm Irish, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. And it wasn't my family. It wasn't Ireland. It's some idiots living in the past. Dolores had never written a song of protest before, especially one so politically charged. Her agent urged her not to release a song so controversial as it would effectively end her career. And if she insisted on releasing this song, he said she might as well just go home, rip up her $1 million contract. Her music label also threatened that if she released the song, they would censor her and have all of her previously released songs removed from radio stations. They also threatened to forfeit all future royalties her songs would earn. Dolores remained defiant, arguing this was a politically urgent song, and she took the song on the road for a full year. Witnessing how her fans responded to the song and that no one boycotted her concerts. In fact, they saw she experienced a growth in her fan base. Her music label and her agent decided to reverse course, and her song Zombie was released for airing on the radio. Even though the song was a radical political protest song, it wasn't necessarily politics she was interested in writing about. Rather, it was a message that we cannot accept that children are being slaughtered at the hands of political violence. Her song was written in a moment of anger, and the lyrics began to change minds and change hearts. And today, her song is credited as one of the tools that led to the IRA's declaration of a ceasefire on August 31st, 1994, and eventually being fully decommissioned in 2005. Much of this was possible because Dolores, who was willing to give up her career and forfeit her royalty income from her songs, had declared that enough was enough. Examining the details surrounding the story of the widow's mite in Mark 12, we discover another example of someone declaring, enough is enough. In the gospel reading, though it appears the widow's act of giving should be celebrated, Jesus described her action with great sorrow as he highlighted her giving, which far exceeded what the scribes gave, as he cast the scribes into a negative light. Jesus described her giving as a private event between herself and God, while the giving done by the scribes was a self-serving practice as they dropped several coins into the collection box. In doing this, Jesus not only described the scribes' actions, but their motives as well. Jesus taught that his listeners should literally watch out for the scribes who walk around in long robes and demand that they are greeted with respect in the marketplaces and take the best seats in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets. He went on to accuse them of devouring widows' houses. The physical description Jesus gives is almost humorous as he describes the scribes going around the marketplace like delusional persons who wore priestly robes in the marketplace, even though they were not priests. Jesus even mocked their method of praying in public to show off their piety, revealing it was a sham, as the prayers were traditionally reserved for use in the temple or synagogues, not out in the streets. In Jesus' view, their self-designated elite status was meaningless and only led to their condemnation. This was a politically dangerous description by Jesus, as these scribes, even if they were spiritually bankrupt, held a lot of power over the vulnerable. The people most vulnerable were the widows. Women in that region already held no power. As a widow, it was worse as they had zero rights in their society. Their care fell to their children, assuming they had grown male children. If their children were neither of these, the widows had to enlist the help of the scribes, who were lawyers, to ensure the women would be able to live on their own estates. This would happen when the widows would choose a scribe and assign a portion of their estate to him so that the scribe could represent the widow in court hearings or in land disputes. However, Jesus accused the scribes of devouring the houses of widows, or in this case, houses referred to the estates the widows had owned. Jesus accused the scribes as being in cahoots with each other and were no better than thieves who defrauded the widows and squandered the rights of the very property the scribes were supposed to represent. Still, even though the scribes were corrupt, none of them would have agreed the widows should live in abject poverty, having absolutely nothing. Yet this is exactly what the widow has set in motion when she dropped the mites into the collection box. She had absolutely nothing. And it's feasible that by having nothing, she may die. Facing that outcome, she declared enough is enough when she dropped those coins in the box. And faithfully, she declared to God that enough was enough. Her calculated protest declared that the system was corrupt. She knew it, and every scribe knew it. Her neighbors knew it. Jesus knew it. And God was reminded of this injustice. As a form of protest, the widow was essentially asking if anyone would step up to plead her case on her behalf or reverse these social misfortunes, not just for her, but for all widows. Though perhaps her intent was not necessarily to change the entire system, but rather to see if the corrupt scribe who represented her might view her humanity and repenting would restore her property. Perhaps her neighbors and the other scribes knew of her situation, and when she gave that sacrificial gift, perhaps when the coins hit the other coins, it resounded with a louder clang than all the coins of the larger deposits made by the scribes. In this context, she forced society to realize that while her actions might be admired by those seeking examples of selfless giving, grief also surrounds this generous gift, which was given sacrificially, while those wanting to devour her estate were forced to watch. With her gift, she declared, enough is enough. And she declared that society had failed her. The scribes she hired to help her had failed her. The scribes who should have followed their faith's teachings failed her. Yet incredibly, she didn't toss her mite into the street in anger or give it to a beggar. She gave it to the church. She gave it to God, thus demonstrating her incredible faith in God. She demonstrated that God remained trustworthy and would provide for her needs even when humans failed her. Though frustrated at her impoverished situation, she did not lose sight of God nor God's ability to care for her. Giving away everything she had, she took a risk of starving, a great risk. Yet in faith, she believed she would receive God's care. And recognizing God had taken care of her all of her life, she gave her treasure to God. There is a saying that we ought to give until it hurts. In the case of the widow, she gave beyond hurting, which sets an example for us to follow, which is also similar to the example the singer Dolores established with her song of protest. Note, Dolores didn't just use her song to protest about humanity's inhumanity against humanity or humanity's inhumanity against children. It was also a cry for persons to get involved and to help, to see the injustice done and be moved to action and become involved in the work for justice. Dolores risked everything she worked so hard to gain to that point. And the widow, she gave everything beyond the point that she could have starved. In addition, Jesus gave everything he had for the world, so that granted, the world would be redeemed, but Jesus also set an example for his followers to follow, so we would also risk everything we have. And by this example, it's not just about risking money, It's about recognizing God's ability to care for us. So we step in and declare enough is enough when an injustice exists. We acknowledge that God's nature is to provide for our needs, so we in turn have the ability to provide for the needs of the needy and the widow and the orphan. Faithfully giving as we pursue the only treasure worth pursuing, which is the glory of God, and displaying through our actions of care our desire to care for all persons, not in a way that our actions and care become boasting. Rather, our actions of care are genuine as we invite persons into God's house and we provide the best meals, the best care, and the best love imaginable. We do this because we have received a cry to action from the gospel reading. And as we have a loving relationship with a living and loving God who blesses us today with the gift of communion and blesses us daily with the ability to utilize our lives in caring for each other and anyone God brings into our lives, to stand with those who have had enough, to wage peace while offering justice and life to the entire community. This is our call as Jesus followers. Will we stand with him, declaring enough is enough?